Debate, reprise de débat, the Honourable Member for Newton, North Delta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to Bill C-525, an act to amend the Canada Labour Code, the Parliamentary Employment and Staff Relations Act. And there are a number of reasons why I'm opposed to it. I fundamentally disagree with the thrust of the bill, but I also am opposed to the process that has been used here. When you just look at what's happening this evening, the government side has no speakers lined up to speak on this bill. I mean, if they really believe in this bill and are so fundamentally supportive of it, surely they should have had that pride and been able to stand up and say whatever they have to say about this legislation. But we have no speakers, and at this very critical stage, no debate. So you've got the opposition left speaking on a very, very important issue. And once again, it adds to that kind of an atmosphere that exists here, that the government now believes they have a majority, we're going to get our way, and we don't even have to get to debate, you guys, and we don't have to pay any attention that maybe through debate you might actually make us see a different point of view. And, you know, as we heard earlier, here we have a private member's bill making fundamental changes to the Canadian Labour Code. That was not the intention or the purpose of private members' bills. We don't bring about such fundamental changes. But this is an example of a government that has an agenda and implements its agenda through private members' business, and we have seen this over and over again. And let's take a look at the process. My colleague across the way, who brought this private members' bill forward, which is his right, he was asked at committee, and by the way, he only appeared for half an hour, and after he'd finished speaking for his half hour, he did not even wait to hear the witnesses who had been called in to speak on this bill. So after his half hour, he left. And when he was asked about consultation, his thing was, I consulted with my constituents, which is a great idea. We should consult with our constituents. But then we have to note, he did not consult with a single major union, not the Canadian Industrial Relations Board, nor the Bankers Association, amongst hundreds others I could mention. And his explanation for that, not consulting any of the stakeholders, was, and I'm going to quote this because if I paraphrase it, nobody's going to believe that this is for real. They've made no effort to consult me. Well, how would all those stakeholders have known what this member was working on for a private member's bill? Surely when you're working on a private member's bill, it behooves you to go out and do some of that consultation, if not at that time, at a different time. But also there's been a sort of an urgency from the government to railroad this piece of legislation through this House. And I do not see what the hurry is. I've sat on a number of different committees where we've looked at legislation, heard a number of witnesses, and had a lot of time to debate and a lot of time to go through clause by clause. But let's take a look at the process that was used for this bill. Half an hour for the member who moved the bill to come and talk to us, 2.5 hours in total for witnesses. And Mr. Speaker, you'll be outraged when you find out that the NDP could only call 3 witnesses. Only 3 witnesses. And I can tell you we had hundreds others chomping at the bits, wanting to come and present their perspective. Not a really thorough way of looking at a bill. And then, after these 3 hours in total, we got 1 additional hour to do all the clause by clause. Really, Mr. Speaker, when you look at this, this just makes a mockery of the legislative process. This makes a mockery of us as parliamentarians being very deliberative, and listening to the points of view from expert witnesses from all sides, and also from listening to the points that we have to make. And you know what, we have a system that was actually working. Nobody was, I haven't heard any petitions. I didn't get people rushing into my riding office saying, please, this bill is necessary or our economic system is about to collapse. What this bill will actually do is it will accelerate the race to the bottom, because it's another example of this government going after decent paying jobs in this country. And people who have these decent paying jobs actually pay taxes. And they use those taxes, and the government uses those taxes then to provide services. But once again, this government, instead of listening to experts and people who actually work in the field, and instead of looking at the testimony from their own departments and from the Labour Relations Board that actually showed the system we have is working, it's not broken, because we know they have an allergy to data and an allergy to making decisions based on real information. They just, once again, are trying to push this legislation through at rapid speed. Here is a quote from FETCO. Federally regulated employers, notice I'm saying employers, Transportation and Communications Branch. First, FETCO has serious concerns regarding the use of private members' bills to amend the Canada Labour Code. Then they go on to say that the rules we have right now are set out by Parliament to continue and extend its support to Labour and management in their cooperative efforts to develop good relations and constructive collective bargaining practices, and deems the development of a good industrial relations to be in the best interests of all Canadians in ensuring a just share of the fruits and progress to all. But of course, we have a government that has an ideology that isn't quite built to that. They also go on to talk about how these rules are there and they exist to provide stability and are constructive, and that they actually act as barriers to our economics being impacted because of the conflicts that could arise. And you know what? Over the years, this preamble has been adhered to by governments of all stripes, both the Conservatives and my friends over there, the Liberals. However, for some reason, this government, without any real evidence, has decided that they need to unfix or break the Labour Code. And then we have Mr. George Smith, who talks about, by the way, the amazing work done by Andrew Sims, who chaired the last series of comprehensive changes. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, just, to have full disclosure, no relative at all, right? Not related to Mr. Sims at all. But really, his panel did an absolutely amazing job. And in the words of Andrew Sims, he goes on to say, we want legislation that is sound, enactable, and lasting. But instead, what we have here, Mr. Speaker, is a government that is going at the Labour Code piecemeal. The Labour Code and industrial relations are very complex and are made up of many components that all fit together. And when you use private members' bill to go in and insert and dissect parts of it out of the Labour Code, you actually open the door for greater instability in our economy than anyone else. And I am absolutely upset, I think that's putting it mildly, that this government has had such lack of process, but not only that, they have refused to engage in meaningful debate right here in this House, which I believe is very, very disrespectful. But on top of that, they are really out to get at people who are making decent wages in this country. And that, Mr. Speaker, is quite shameful. So I am proud to be speaking in opposition to this bill. Thank you.